Speaker, to the Minister of Finance, what advice, if any, did Treasury receive from KordaMentha in relation to South Canterbury Finance's financial condition prior to approving the extension of the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme? And did this advice question whether such an extension was appropriate?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, KordaMentha was engaged by Treasury in June 2009 to undertake detailed analysis of South Canterbury Finance, and they made regular reports to Treasury regarding the state of the company. The fact that Treasury believed there was a chance South Canterbury could fail was publicly demonstrated in the public accounts for the year ended June 2009, where a provision of $831 million was made. This provision was based on an independent assessment of the size of the loss that could occur from a major failure such as South Canterbury, and the provision appeared in the first place because there was an assessment that there was a more than even chance that South Canterbury, along with other finance companies, would fail. I would point out to the member that South Canterbury Finance did not fail under the extended Crown guarantee. That has not come into effect yet and won't come into effect until October the 13th. South Canterbury Finance failed under the original guarantee established in late 2008.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, what reports from KordaMentha did Treasury receive of South Canterbury Finance using its acceptance into the guarantee scheme to attract more investment and to increase its loans, and when were those reports received?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think the member might have had a list of the dates of those reports through the answer to a written question. I can't tell the member whether they focused on those issues. The reports were made to Treasury under their delegation under the arrangements put in place by the previous government and supported by this government, where Treasury made those decisions. We do need to keep in mind that part of the point of the guarantee was to allow the finance companies to raise money, because if they didn't raise new money, then they would certainly fail in the end.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, when a Treasury official said, and I quote, "South Canterbury's failure was well anticipated," close quote, what was the earliest date Treasury formed the conclusion that South Canterbury Finance could fail? And when and by whom was this first raised with the Minister?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I couldn't give you a particular date. What I can tell the member is that by June 2009, by the time the June 2009 accounts were published, the government made a provision to cover the possibility that South Canterbury Finance would fail. So, no, not just South Canterbury, but South Canterbury and others. So there was an $831 million provision made at that stage. So Treasury must have come to a view sometime, I presume, before those accounts were finalised in perhaps March and April of 2009.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
To the Minister, what advice, if any, did Treasury receive relating to South Canterbury's potential breach of its deed of guarantee, and when and by whom was this first reported to the Minister?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I can't recall whether the member was asking about a breach of the guarantee or a breach of its own trustee. As far as I'm aware, Treasury did not receive any advice at any stage from anyone that South Canterbury Finance had breached the terms of the guarantee, because in fact if that advice had been received, the guarantee would have been removed, as it was in the case of, I think, one other finance company.
David Bennett.
Supplementary question to the Minister of Finance. Once South Canterbury Finance had been admitted to the Crown guarantee, were there any subsequent actions the Crown could have taken then they would have reduced the cost to taxpayers?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think we need to keep in mind that once South Canterbury Finance was admitted to the guarantee, the only way that it could have exited the guarantee without a cost to taxpayers was if the company was successfully recapitalised and managed to get back to stability and business as usual. As it turned out, that wasn't possible because of the significant amount of low, bad quality loans that it had made, mostly prior to entering the guarantee. So in effect, once South Canterbury was admitted to the scheme in 2008, the die was cast. The one action the government could take and has taken was to pay all depositors promptly once a receivership occurred, so as to reduce interest costs. The Treasury estimate that this has saved the Crown around about $100 million.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
To the Minister, did Treasury or any other officials or advisers ever approach the Minister with a proposal to appoint a statutory manager in respect of South Canterbury Finance, either prior to the extension in April 2010 or before placing it into receivership on 31 August 2010?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, first can I just correct one impression. The deposit guarantee scheme was not extended in April 2010. What happened was finance companies applied for entry to an extended guarantee that was beginning in October 2010, and South Canterbury Finance failed under the original guarantee. With respect to statutory management, the answer to that is no, and the reason for that is because if there had been a call for a reason for statutory management, that would have been directed to the Minister who has a statutory responsibility for making getting advice, and that is the Minister of Commerce, on the advice and recommendation of the Securities Commission, not through Treasury to the Minister of Finance.
Point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. Firstly, in two parts. The first part of the point of order is to note that the first part of the Minister's response was irrelevant to the question asked, in that I did not make a proposition in respect of April 2010.
The member will sit down. That is totally misusing the point of order process to comment on the Minister's answer. Now, I listened very carefully to the Minister's answer, and while I accept in the first part of his answer he was pointing out with respect to the commencement of the extended guarantee scheme, the second part of when he did move on, though, to answer very precisely what the member asked. The member asked, if I recollect correctly, whether advice had been received about the appointment of a statutory manager by the Treasury, as I understand, recollect the question. And the Minister was absolutely precise. He said, to the best of his knowledge, no. The member's question was absolutely answered. Question number 7, Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.